Have you guys ever wondered what it's like to fly across the world in one of the world's longest flights? Well, that's what we're doing today. Let's get to the airport. This is how you do it, guys. After 6 months in Asia, this thing's a little packed. So you gotta really give it a body slam and give it a real good push. There we go. Good morning, y'all. It is Reedy here, and welcome to, yet again, another video. Today, I am in the city of Bangkok, and I am starting the voyage back home to the United States. And in that process, I'm going to be taking one of the longest plane rides in the world, which is going to be 15.5 to 16 hours directly from Manila in the Philippines to JFK in New York City. But right now, I am still in Bangkok, so we do have a 3-hour flight from Bangkok to Manila, so let's get to Manila. Well, guys, we are all checked in. We're through security and immigration. Unfortunately, I'm one of those guys that shows up to the airport extra early, so our gate's not even open to wait at. But we got a little coffee and a little banana nut muffin to pass the time before our gate opens, and we get to Manila to take this long-haul flight back to JFK. Let's go. After a good flight from Bangkok to Manila, this is where all of the problems started. First, my mic was not working, and then second, Philippine Airlines had all of its connecting passengers crammed in this tiny space, took our passports for an unknown reason and would not explain to us, and then told us just to wait there until they said to go through the security check. Then, after waiting an hour and the first security check, we were told to find our bags in this complete unorganized mess for another security check before we were allowed to even get our passports. Finally, after waiting an additional hour, my suitcase did finally arrive. What a fiasco. I have no idea what's going on. I don't have my passport. No video? After nearly 3 hours of waiting, 2 security checks, and playing hide-and-go-seek with my luggage, my passport finally arrived, and then the next step was to pack us all on this bus to ship us to the next terminal, where the flight's actually leaving from. Which, once we arrived at the flight terminal, we had our third security screening that we had to go through before we could get to the terminal for our flight. Alright guys, after our 5th security check, I don't know where we're at or what we're supposed to do. We're at gate 14. There's this massive line of people. And there's another possible security check, so I guess we'll see. We are finally at the boarding gate. However, we are on to our 5th security check. This has got to go. This is going to be the most secure flight in all of the Philippines, that's for sure. This is mine. We are through the final security check after this absolute fiasco of a day. We're finally getting on this plane to New York, and now, after all of that wonderful fun, we have a 15-hour flight. Hopefully they got some good food and some good movies, because this has been stressful.
Waiting for us. What's your passport and boarding?
Thank you. We have made it on the plane. The plane itself is not so bad. Seats kind of big. We get a nice little pillow, a blanket, and some headphones, and a nice screen. Hopefully they got some good movies. Let's see how this flight goes. First mishap. Only one ear of my headphones work, so that'll be good for watching movies on this 15-hour flight. Alright, despite the rough start here to the flight, we just got our first meal, some chicken barbecue with rice here. Let's give this a shot. They are redeeming themselves a little bit here, despite the headphones and the little rough start. They are redeeming themselves quite well. The chicken barbecue is pretty fire. Let's eat. We have hit the halfway mark. We have 7.5 hours left. The morale was getting down. I was getting a little antsy, but we got our next meal, some chicken and pasta, which does not really look that appetizing, but it smells actually pretty good. It tastes way better than it looks, that's for sure. Things stats so far are finished one movie, about half of 2 other movies, and took 2 naps so far. 1 meal, we're on number 2. Not doing so bad. We got another 7.5 hours left, so just gotta do all this again and then we'll be home. We are on the home stretch. We only have 2 hours left. We just got our last meal here. This has been a bit of a tough one. Just sitting in one chair for nearly 15 hours is kind of exhausting in its own, even though you're not doing anything. Overall, despite the kind of rough transfer from Bangkok to here, the flight has been pretty pleasant. They got a bunch of good movies on here. Food has been relatively decent. We have our last meal here. We'll let you know how that is. And the flight has been pretty smooth, so hopefully we get back home quickly and safely. Originally, I actually did film this outro in the airport directly after the flight to give my thoughts and opinions. However, after spending over 24 hours traveling, being extremely tired and jet-lagged, I did not think that I depicted exactly what I was thinking correctly due to the stress and just sheer tiredness and lack of sleep. But guys, now I'm going to give you my review on how this experience was. Flying with Philippine Airlines all the way from Bangkok, but with the main stretch being from Manila to JFK. First of all, I'm going to go into the flight itself. The flight itself, I would give maybe around a 6 or 7 out of 10. There was really not much to complain about. The food was decent. They had a decent selection of movies and TV shows, entertainment to watch. The only really downside to it was my headphones did not work. However, some of the other people that I met there on the flight said the same thing, and if I just asked for another pair, they would have given it to me. So overall, the flight was, not so bad. Ultimately, pretty pleasant, and even though it was quite long at 15 and a half hours, it did go by relatively quickly. However, compared to I've flown Qatar Airways in the past, their food is much better, their service is much better, and overall just a better experience. Now, to get into the caveat of all of this, something that's rated a 6 or 7 out of 10, does not seem so bad. However, the experience with the transfer in Manila's airport was horrendous. I would not even give it a 1 because ultimately it was one of the most stressful experiences and an absolute nightmare in all of my traveling around the world. First off, you just get told to stay in a room there, just cramped with all of these other passengers, not even just going on to my flight, but any Philippines airline flight that was connecting, you're just shoved in this room, and then they take your passport. There's no exact reason why you would think, if you already booked the flights, that they would have your passport information, that it's not needed to hold my only thing that gets me into my country hostage while I'm sitting there waiting for some unknown check to be done. Then, after, we got told, okay, now we could go through the security check, we still don't have our passports, then they just shove all of our bags into this cramped room. We have to find our bags for them to do a second security check, which was not much of a security check and doesn't make sense why they couldn't have just shipped these bags to the terminal where the flight was actually going to happen and check those bags there themselves. There's no reason we needed to wait and to sit there and find our bags. If our bags were not making it home, there's nothing I could do about it. If I sat there and my bag didn't come, what would have happened then? I don't know. I guess luckily that did not happen. However, there was no reason for us to wait there and our passports be held hostage until we found our bags. This was the biggest thing, is that our passports were held hostage this whole time. We're waiting there. It took 3 hours. I had a 4.5 hour layover, and it took all of that 4.5 hours to actually get to the flight. So then, after we find our bags, it looks good. I get my passport back. We get bused to the other terminal. Now, after they've checked our bodies, our bags, twice already, we have a third security check once we get to the terminal, which, okay, I kind of understand, because they don't know that we're coming from and we already got checked. But then, after we get security checked coming into the building, before we get on the flight, we have a fourth security check. 4 security checks that were conducted by Philippine Airlines, by their process that they did. This was nothing a fault of any of the passengers. They did not do anything wrong. They were there on time. There was nothing. And ultimately, right before you're about to take a super long flight, that you're wondering, even though I had this 4-hour layover, which I planned so that I had ample time to make it to my final flight, am I going to be stuck in the Philippines? Now, that wouldn't be the absolute worst thing. However, I was planning on spending it home for the holidays. So when you have all of this happening within your layover, you don't have a passport, it becomes extremely stressful. And ultimately, if you are making any of these connecting flights with Philippine Airlines and the long hauls back to the US or Europe or anything like that, I would recommend absolutely do not take this, because it was a horrific experience and one of the worst travel nightmares that I've ever had in my travels here around the world. Ultimately, the flight itself was actually pretty decent, and if you just have the from Manila to JFK, I would say this was actually a pretty decent flight. It's nice, it's direct, it is quite long. However, no flights are short from the Philippines to the United States. So, overall, guys, I would give this a 4 out of 10. Like I said, the flight itself was a 6 or 7, maybe out of 10, but then after you add this horrific experience, I would say a 4, and I would not recommend this at all. But that is the review here of my experience with Philippine Airlines for my first flight with them. I will certainly not be flying with them again. Guys, if you hadn't made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I very much appreciate that. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you see when my next videos are posted. And I will see you in the next video.